The Middle East is embroiled in a proxy war between Sunni Saudi Arabia and Shia Iran, which has created a crisis in Lebanon. The competition resumed this week, and it appears that Saudi Arabia is losing. On November 4, Lebanese Prime Minister Saad Hariri unexpectedly resigned his post last week while on a trip to Riyadh and has not been home since, prompting a great deal of speculation that he's being kept against his will. His announcement came in a recorded message aired on Saudi media. In the message, he criticized Iran for interfering in Arab affairs and criticized Hezbollah for holding his country captive. He resigned, he said, because there was a plot to kill him. The next day, the Saudi Minister of State for Arabian Gulf Affairs accused Lebanon of declaring war on his country. But officials in the Sunni politician's own party have told reporters they think Hariri, a longtime beneficiary of Saudi patronage, was coerced and made to resign. Tensions have run high before, but the past week has been particularly acrimonious. Lebanon is a country divided into Shia, Sunni, Christian and Druze communities. Civil war wrecked the country for 15 years until a power-sharing agreement was reached in 1989. The treaty was in part a reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which told their proxy groups that participated in the war to settle their differences. The accord named Syria the overseer of Lebanon, and for the next 2 decades, Hezbollah, a Shia Islamist movement backed by Syria and Iran, gradually became the most powerful force in Lebanon. The rise of Hezbollah was due to Israeli invasion in 1982. The Israeli military remained in southern Lebanon until 2000, which gave Hezbollah an excuse to maintain a massive armed wing, even after rejoining the political mainstream. The International Tribunal found Hezbollah to be involved with Syrian intelligence operatives in the 2005 assassination of Hariri's father, former Prime Minister and Saudi functionary Rafik Hariri. Under pressure from the West, Syria was forced to withdraw tens of thousands of troops it had stationed in Lebanon. But through Hezbollah it maintained its influence. Hezbollah's armed wing was more powerful than the Lebanese military. In 2006 Hezbollah launched a series of rocket attacks and raids into Israeli territory. Israel responded with airstrikes and artillery fire on targets in Lebanon, and a ground invasion of southern Lebanon. The resilience of Hezbollah added to its clout, and, by extension, to Iran's. In early January 2011, the National Unity government collapsed. Hezbollah was able to engineer Saad Hariri's ouster. A few weeks later, the Arab Spring started, and by March it had reached Syria. For Riyadh, the uprising in Syria was a godsend. The Saudi kingdom had been losing ground to Tehran for some time, so if the Sunni majority in Syria was able to topple the government of Bashar Assad, which was aligned with Iran, then it would have broken the otherwise uninterrupted arc of influence Tehran had from Iran to the Mediterranean Sea. It would also weaken Hezbollah. Well, everything went as planned in the earlier stages. But once Russia entered the war, the tables were turned. The Syrian government, backed by massive amounts of Iranian and Russian support, reclaimed territory it had earlier lost to the rebels. Today the government is still in place and in a stronger position. Lebanon was out of this equation. But the Saudis were losing Syria and Iraq to Iran, and could not afford to lose Lebanon as well. The Iranians already were in a strong position and had no reason to disturb that reality. Saudi Arabia had been supporting jihadists in the Syrian conflict, hoping that they could effect regime change. Well, that did not happen. Instead, Riyadh inadvertently empowered groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. And their rise actually undermined Saudi Arabia's position in Lebanon. The main political Sunni faction there, Hariri's Future Movement Party, was in a state of decay, having been challenged for years by Sunni hardliners. Non-Sunni factions were scared of what empowered radical Sunni groups in Syria would do to them if Assad lost the war. Hezbollah's participation in the Syrian civil war, then, benefited Saudi Arabia's enemies in Lebanon. The Lebanese peace agreement in 1989 covered political reform, the ending of the Lebanese civil war, the establishment of special relations between Lebanon and Syria. According to the agreement, the president would be a Christian, the prime minister would be a Sunni, and the speaker of the parliament would be a Shia. All major parliamentary factions would be represented in the cabinet. The presidency for years had been held by individuals who were neutral but sympathetic to Saudi Arabia. However, Michel Aoun, a Hezbollah ally, was elected president a year ago. In 1 year Iran has become more influential than ever. The defeat of Islamic State has strengthened Iran's position in Syria and Iraq. The Assad government dependent on Iran is recapturing territory. The Saudis have not seen success. In Yemen, they have been unable to defeat the Houthis. Only a few days ago, Riyadh intercepted a missile allegedly launched by Houthis. Nevertheless, Riyadh has pushed an even more aggressive Yemen policy as well as the blockade of Qatar, which drags on with no resolution in sight. The only place Saudi Arabia can counter Iran is in Lebanon. If Riyadh can end the uneasy peace in the country, it could force Iran and Hezbollah to spend less time and attention in Syria and Iraq and more in Lebanon. Saudi Arabia has, at a minimum, backed a campaign to fuel the idea that war is always possible. But this is a wrong calculation. They will be unable to do anything and get more frustrated. Saudi Arabia has its own problems and as usual is not going to be successful. These futile attempts only show how weak Riyadh has become.